The morning sun poured through the tall windows of my Chicago office, casting light on the stack of grant applications for today's review at the Carter Family Foundation. I'm Emily Carter, the founder of this $50 million organization that funds education and healthcare for underserved communities. At 32, I've built something meaningful, yet my family still sees me as the dreamer who threw away a law career. Just 3 hours ago, in our parents' kitchen, my older brother Michael stood there in his tailored suit, smirking. "Still chasing pipe dreams, Emily?" he'd said, assuming I was scraping by on freelance gigs. What he didn't know was that his law firm's latest community project was about to seek funding from my foundation. In 20 minutes, Michael would walk into my conference room, expecting a standard grant review, completely unaware that his little sister held his project's fate. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel, my COO. Michael Carter's meeting moved to main boardroom. "This will be good," I smiled, ready for the moment he'd see the truth. If you love family drama and shocking twists, subscribe and hit the bell. Don't miss what happens next. My office overlooked Chicago's bustling skyline, the kind of view that reminded me how far I'd come. The Carter Family Foundation, my brainchild, had grown from a small idea scribbled in a coffee shop to a $50 million force for good, funding schools, clinics, and scholarships across the Midwest. Yet, as I sat at my desk, flipping through Michael's grant application, I couldn't shake the sting of his words from this morning. Pipe dreams, he'd called my life's work, standing in Mom and Dad's kitchen, his voice dripping with that familiar mix of pity and superiority. At 35, Michael was the golden child, a partner at a top law firm, always in a crisp suit, always quick to remind everyone I was the family letdown. I dropped out of law school, walked away from a stable future, and chosen a path my family couldn't understand. They didn't know I'd built a foundation that had saved thousands of lives. They didn't know I owned the sleek condo building I lived in, or that I'd been quietly paying for Dad's heart treatments for years. And they definitely didn't know that in 15 minutes, Michael would walk into my boardroom expecting a routine grant review, only to face the sister he'd spent years dismissing. I leaned back in my chair, glancing at the framed photo on my desk. Me, Michael, Mom and Dad at a family barbecue 10 years ago, before the tension between us grew into a chasm. Back then, we were close, or at least I thought we were. But when I left law school to start a nonprofit, Michael's disappointment turned into disdain. "You're throwing your life away," he'd said at a family dinner 5 years ago, his fork pausing mid-air as he lectured me in front of everyone. "You could have been a lawyer, Emily. Instead, you're chasing some do-gooder fantasy." Mom had nodded faintly. Dad stayed silent, and I just ate my mashed potatoes, letting their judgment settle like dust. What they didn't see were the late nights I spent writing grant proposals, the partnerships I forged with hospitals, the kids whose educations I funded. They didn't see the lives changed because of my fantasy. Michael's application landed on my desk 2 months ago, flagged by my assistant, Lisa Morgan. His law firm, Grayson & Pierce, wanted a $1 million grant to fund a community legal aid program for low-income families. It was a solid proposal, well-researched, ambitious, exactly the kind of project my foundation supported. But the irony was almost too much. Michael, who thought I was wasting my life, was now asking for my money to make his firm look good. He had no idea I was the one reviewing his proposal. When Lisa brought me the file, she'd raised an eyebrow. "Your brother, huh? This is going to be interesting." I'd only nodded, but inside, I was already imagining the look on his face when he realized who was in charge. I opened Michael's application on my tablet. His credentials were impeccable. Yale Law, 7 years at Grayson & Pierce, a string of high-profile cases that had earned him a corner office. He'd built a career most people would envy, but he'd also built it on the assumption that I'd never amount to anything. Every family gathering, he'd find a way to slip in a jab. "Still working at that nonprofit, Emily?" he'd ask, as if I was handing out flyers on a street corner. Last Christmas, he'd even suggested I was living off Mom and Dad's savings, oblivious to the fact that I'd been covering their mortgage for 2 years. The coffee shop theory was his favorite, though. He'd seen me working on my laptop at a cafe near his office and decided I must be a barista. "You're always at those coffee shops," he'd said this morning, smirking as he sipped his espresso. "What is it, part-time manager now?" I didn't correct him. I just dropped off Dad's birthday gift, a rare vintage watch that cost more than Michael's car, and left, letting him think it was some thrift store find. This morning's kitchen confrontation replayed in my mind as I waited for the meeting. I'd stopped by Mom and Dad's place in Evanston to drop off the gift before heading to the office. Michael was there, looking sharp in a navy suit, probably prepping for his big pitch. "What are you doing here so early?" he'd asked, his tone implying I had no business being up before noon. "Just dropping off Dad's gift," I'd said, placing the velvet box on the counter. He barely glanced at it. "Right. Well, I've got a huge meeting today with the Carter Family Foundation, biggest grant pitch of my career, so maybe don't stick around. I don't need any distractions." Distractions, that's what he called me. Then he'd leaned in, his voice low and sharp. "Emily, you're a walking reminder of what not to do with your life. 32, no real career, no stability. I'm trying to secure $1 million for a project that actually matters. The last thing I need is people knowing I'm related to someone who's still figuring out how to grow up." Mom had tried to soften the blow. "Michael, that's not fair." But he'd cut her off. "No, Mom, it's true. We've all been polite about it for too long. Emily dropped out of law school, bounces between random jobs, lives like she's still in college. I'm pitching to one of the most prestigious foundations in Chicago. I can't have my name tied to someone who's, well, you know." He didn't finish the sentence, but the message was clear. I was the family embarrassment, the one who'd never measure up. I just nodded, said nothing, and walked out, knowing that in a few hours, he'd be sitting across from me, begging for my foundation's money. Now, in my office, I closed the application file and checked the time. 10 minutes until the meeting. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Rachel Evans, my COO. "Panel's ready in the boardroom. Michael's early, pacing the lobby like he owns it." I smiled despite myself. Rachel was one of the few people who knew about my family drama. She'd been with me since the foundation's early days, back when it was just me and a rented desk in a co-working space. She'd seen the long hours, the sleepless nights, the moments when I doubted myself but kept going. She'd also seen the hurt every time I came back from a family event where I was still the dreamer who'd never make it. "Let him pace," I texted back. "This is gonna be worth it." I stood, smoothing my tailored blazer, and headed to the boardroom. The Carter Family Foundation's headquarters were designed to impress. Floor-to-ceiling windows, modern art on the walls, and a digital dashboard showing real-time impact metrics, number of students funded, clinics supported, lives touched. The boardroom itself was a statement of power, with a long glass table, leather chairs, and a view of Lake Michigan that could stop anyone in their tracks. My team was already there. Rachel Evans, my COO, who'd helped scale our operations, Daniel Foster, head of grant programs, who vetted every application with a hawk's eye, and Lisa Morgan, my assistant, who'd already pulled up Michael's proposal on the wall screen. "You sure about this?" Rachel asked, her voice low as I took my seat at the head of the table. "Sitting in on your brother's pitch? It's personal." I met her gaze. "It's not just personal, it's necessary." Daniel leaned forward, glancing at the screen. "His proposal's strong, Emily. Grayson and Pierce wants to fund legal aid clinics in underserved neighborhoods. It aligns with our mission. But," he hesitated, looking at me, "you're the one signing the checks. You okay with this?" I nodded. "Let's hear him out, then we'll see." Lisa chimed in, a smirk playing on her lips. "I've got to say, I'm curious how this plays out. You don't usually sit in on grant reviews." I didn't respond, but my silence said enough. This wasn't just another meeting. This was 5 years of being underestimated, dismissed, and belittled, all coming to a head. At exactly 10 a.m., Lisa's voice crackled through the intercom. "Michael Carter's here." I turned my chair slightly, facing the screen, my back to the door. "Send him in," I said, keeping my voice steady. My heart beat a little faster, not from nerves, but from the anticipation of what was about to unfold. The door opened, and I heard Michael's polished loafers clicking against the hardwood floor. His voice, confident and rehearsed, filled the room. "Thank you for having me. I'm Michael Carter, partner at Grayson & Pierce, and I'm thrilled to present our proposal for your community legal aid program." Rachel stood to greet him. "Welcome, Michael. I'm Rachel Evans, COO. This is Daniel Foster, head of grant programs, and Lisa Morgan, executive assistant." She paused, and I could hear the amusement in her voice. "And Emily Carter, our founder and executive director, wanted to personally sit in on this one." I turned my chair slowly, letting the moment stretch. Michael's face was a study in confidence until he saw me. His smile froze, his eyes widened, and the color drained from his cheeks like water from a broken dam. "Emily?" he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. I stood, extending my hand with a calm smile. "Hello, Michael. Welcome to the Carter Family Foundation. I'm Emily Carter, executive director. Please have a seat." The silence was deafening. Michael's briefcase slipped slightly in his grip, and he fumbled to set it on the table. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again, but no words came out. The man who'd spent years lecturing me about ambition and success was now staring at me like I'd just pulled the rug out from under his entire world. I don't understand," he finally managed, sinking into the chair across from me. "What don't you understand?" I asked, my tone professional, but laced with just enough edge to remind him of this morning. "The grant review process? I'd be happy to explain. We'll discuss your proposal, your firm's capacity, and how your project aligns with our mission." Rachel stepped in, her voice smooth as she redirected the conversation. "Michael, your proposal outlines a legal aid program for low-income families. Can you walk us through your firm's experience in community outreach?" Michael blinked, clearly struggling to shift gears. "Yes, of course," he said, his voice unsteady at first, but gaining strength as he fell back on his prepared pitch. "Grayson & Pierce has a strong track record in pro bono work. Last year, we provided legal support to over 500 families with a focus on housing and employment disputes. Our proposed program would expand that, creating permanent clinics in 3 Chicago neighborhoods." Daniel nodded, jotting notes. "Your numbers are solid. What's your strategy for sustainability?" As Michael launched into his response, I watched him closely. Despite the shock, he was good, articulate, knowledgeable, confident in his field. His firm's proposal was thorough, with clear metrics and a compelling case for impact. Under different circumstances, he'd be exactly the kind of partner we'd fund, but these weren't different circumstances. This was the brother who'd called me a failure, who'd assumed I was wasting my life, who'd never once asked what I actually did. I leaned forward, interrupting his flow. "That's a traditional approach, Michael. Solid, but traditional. At the Carter Family Foundation, we prioritize innovation, programs that rethink how aid is delivered. Daniel, show him our current education initiative." Daniel tapped the screen, pulling up a dashboard of our flagship program, a scholarship system that used data analytics to identify and support at-risk students. "This program," I said, "uses predictive modeling to target aid where it's needed most. We're seeing graduation rates increase by 35% in our partner schools." Michael's eyes widened as he took in the numbers. Those results are impressive, he said, his voice quieter now. They're standard for us, I replied. We don't just fund projects, we redefine how change happens. The question is, can you think beyond the frameworks you learned at Yale? The challenge hung in the air, and for the first time, Michael looked at me not as his little sister, but as someone who might actually know more than he did. Michael's eyes lingered on the dashboard, the numbers flickering across the screen like a challenge to everything he thought he knew. His polished confidence had cracked, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty as he processed the reality that I, Emily Carter, his dreamer sister, was the one running this $50 million foundation. The boardroom was silent except for the faint hum of the air conditioning, and I could feel Rachel, Daniel, and Lisa watching us, sensing the undercurrent of tension. Michael cleared his throat, trying to regain his footing. Your approach is innovative, he said, his voice careful, like he was navigating a minefield. I'd need to understand your systems better to align our proposal. I leaned back in my chair, keeping my expression neutral. That's a start, but alignment isn't enough. We fund visionaries, Michael, people who rethink what's possible. Can you do that? His jaw tightened, and for a moment I saw the old Michael, the one who'd always assumed he was the smarter sibling, the one who'd spent years dismissing me. But he didn't argue. He just nodded, his hands clasped tightly on the table. Rachel broke the silence, her tone professional but warm. Let's take a step back. Michael, your proposal is strong, but we'd like to hear more about your firm's long-term commitment to community impact. As he launched into a detailed response about Grayson and Pierce's pro bono initiatives, I studied him. He was good at this, polished, persuasive, every bit the lawyer he'd worked so hard to become. But I wasn't here to judge his pitch. I was here to decide whether he deserved a chance to see me for who I really was. 5 years of his condescension flashed through my mind. Every family dinner where he'd rolled his eyes at my non-profit nonsense. Every time he'd implied I was leeching off mom and dad. He'd built his career on being the successful Carter, while I'd built a legacy in the shadows, funding Ethan's school tuition, dad's medical bills, and mom's new kitchen remodel without ever taking credit. The meeting wrapped up with Daniel asking a few final questions about budget projections. Michael answered smoothly, but his eyes kept darting to me like he was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Thank you, Michael, I said, standing. We'll need a moment to discuss your proposal internally. Lisa, can you show Michael to the lobby? There's a display of our recent projects he might find interesting. Michael hesitated, then nodded, grabbing his briefcase and following Lisa out. The door closed behind him, and the room exhaled. Rachel turned to me, her eyebrows raised. Your brother, that was intense. I smiled faintly. You have no idea. Daniel leaned forward, tapping his pen on the table. His proposal's solid, Emily. It's exactly the kind of project we'd fund. But this feels personal. What's your call? I walked to the window, looking out at Chicago's skyline, the Willis Tower cutting through the horizon like a reminder of what I'd built against all odds. He's talented, I said finally. His firm's numbers are impeccable, and their legal aid program could make a real difference. But, I paused, choosing my words carefully. He spent years assuming I'm a failure without ever asking what I do. He's benefited from my work, Ethan's tuition, dad's treatments, while calling me a dreamer who'll never amount to anything. Rachel whistled softly. That's a lot to unpack. So what's the plan? Fund his project and call it a day? Or, she trailed off, leaving the question open. Daniel chimed in. Or you could reject it. Let him stew on what he's missed. I turned back to the group, my mind racing. Both options were tempting. Approving his grant would be the easy choice. Professional, clean, no drama. Rejecting it would sting, forcing him to confront how wrong he'd been. but neither felt right. "There's another option," I said, my voice steady. "We don't just fund his project, we bring him in." Rachel's eyes widened. "Bring him in? As what?" I crossed my arms, the idea taking shape. "Special legal advisor to the foundation, reporting directly to me. His expertise could strengthen our programs, and his firm's connections could open new doors. But more than that, it's a chance for him to see what I've built and maybe learn something." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's bold. Working with your brother after everything. You sure you're not setting yourself up for a headache?" I smiled, a little sharper than I intended. "Maybe, but he's my brother, and despite everything, he's good at what he does. This could be a chance for both of us." Lisa returned, her expression curious. "He's in the lobby, staring at the impact wall like it's a puzzle he can't solve." I nodded, picturing Michael standing among the plaques showcasing our work, scholarships funded, clinics built, communities transformed. Good, let him think about it. Bring him back in 10 minutes. As Lisa left, Rachel leaned forward. "You're playing a risky game, Emily." "Hiring your brother after he called you a failure this morning? That's either genius or a disaster waiting to happen." I shrugged. "Maybe it's both. But I've spent years proving people wrong. Maybe it's time he sees what that looks like up close." 10 minutes later, Michael walked back into the boardroom, his posture stiff but his face composed. He'd had time to process the shock, but I could still see the questions burning in his eyes. "Michael," I began, sitting at the head of the table, "we've reviewed your proposal, and it's strong, but we're not going to fund it as is." His face fell slightly, a mix of disappointment and confusion. "Not as is?" he asked. "What does that mean?" I leaned forward, meeting his gaze. "It means we see potential in you, not just your firm. We'd like to offer you a role here at the Carter Family Foundation, special legal advisor, working directly with me on strategic initiatives and program development." Michael blinked, his hands freezing on the table. "A role? Working? For you?" The word hung in the air, heavy with implication. "With me," I corrected, keeping my tone even. "Every day. You'd bring your legal expertise to our programs, help us navigate partnerships, and ensure our grants have maximum impact. It's a chance to rethink how legal aid intersects with community needs." He stared at me, his mind clearly racing. "And the grant?" he asked, his voice cautious. Rachel slid a folder across the table. "Details are in there. We'd fund a pilot version of your program, contingent on your involvement here. The compensation package is competitive." Michael opened the folder, his eyes scanning the page. I watched them widen as he saw the numbers. A salary 30% higher than his current one, plus benefits, equity in future foundation projects, and a signing bonus that could cover a year of Ethan's tuition. "This is generous," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We pay for excellence," I replied. "The question is, can you work with someone you called a failure this morning?" The directness hit him like a punch. His cheeks flushed, but he didn't look away. "I was wrong," he said quietly. "Clearly, I was wrong about a lot." I tilted my head, holding his gaze. "You were wrong about more than my career, Michael. You were wrong about my drive, my vision, my ability to build something that matters. The question is, what else are you wrong about?" He swallowed hard, his fingers tightening around the folder. "I'd like to find out," he said finally, "if you'll have me." I extended my hand across the table. "Welcome to the Carter Family Foundation, Michael. This is going to be an education for both of us." He shook my hand, his grip firm, but not as confident as it had been an hour ago. As he left to review the offer with his firm, Rachel lingered, closing the door behind him. "That was bold," she said, crossing her arms. "Hiring your brother after all of that? You're either a saint or a master strategist." I gathered my notes, staring out at the skyline. Maybe I just want him to see who I really am. If he can handle it, we might both learn something. If he can't, I trailed off, letting the thought hang. Rachel nodded. Fair enough, but you're putting a lot of faith in him. I smiled faintly. Not faith, opportunity. He's my brother. He deserves a chance to get it right. Over the next few weeks, Michael started as my advisor, his office just down the hall from mine. The first days were awkward. He was professional but guarded, clearly still processing the shift in our dynamic. I kept things strictly business, assigning him to review contracts for a new scholarship program and coordinate with our healthcare partners. But I could see him watching me, noting the way I ran meetings, the respect I commanded from the team, the impact of our work. One afternoon, he stopped by my office, holding a stack of legal documents. "This scholarship program," he said, his tone cautious, "it's reaching kids who'd never get a shot otherwise. How did you figure out the predictive model?" I leaned back, surprised by the question. Years of trial and error, and a lot of coffee shop meetings. He smiled, a rare crack in his usual seriousness. "I thought you were a barista," I laughed, the tension easing for the first time. "You thought a lot of things." By the end of the first month, Michael was diving into our programs with a focus I hadn't expected. He proposed streamlining our grant process, cutting red tape without sacrificing rigor. Daniel, usually skeptical of newcomers, admitted his ideas were sharp. "Your brother's good," he told me one day over lunch. "He's learning fast." I nodded, but part of me was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Would Michael resent working for me? Would his pride get in the way? But as the weeks passed, I saw something shift. He started asking questions, not just about contracts, but about our mission, our data, our vision. He was starting to see the foundation not as my pet project, but as something bigger. One evening, as we worked late on a funding proposal, Michael looked up from his laptop. "Emily, I didn't know you were paying for Ethan's school." I froze, my fingers pausing on the keyboard. "How did you find out?" He shrugged, a faint smile on his face. "I'm your advisor now. I see the expense reports. Phoenix Academy, full tuition for Ethan Turner, age 9. My son." I kept my expression neutral. "It's just something I do." He shook his head, his voice softer. "You've been doing a lot of things. Dad's treatments, Mom's remodel. He trailed off, looking away. "You thought I was a failure," I finished for him. "You thought I was wasting my life while you were out there winning." He met my eyes, his face open in a way I hadn't seen in years. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry." I nodded, letting the words settle. Apology noted. "But Michael, this isn't just about being wrong. It's about seeing what's in front of you. I've been here, building this, and you never asked." He leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "I didn't ask because I thought I had you figured out. Yale, the firm, the corner office, I thought that was success. But this," he gestured around my office, the walls lined with awards and impact reports. "This is something else." I smiled, closing my laptop. "It's not about being better than you, Michael. It's about doing what matters. If you can get behind that, we're good." He nodded, and for the first time in years, I felt like we were on the same page. 6 months had passed since Michael joined the Carter Family Foundation, and the Chicago skyline outside our headquarters sparkled under the afternoon sun. I stood in the main conference room, watching Michael prepare for his first major presentation to our board, a proposal for a citywide education initiative that could transform how we funded schools. He was different now, his usual lawyer polish softened by a new kind of focus. Gone was the smug older brother who'd called me a dreamer. In his place was someone who'd spent months learning our systems, challenging his own assumptions, and earning the respect of my team. But as I watched him adjust his slides, I couldn't help wondering if this change would last, Could we really move past years of misunderstanding, or was this just a temporary truce? Michael had thrown himself into his role as special legal advisor with an intensity that surprised me. He'd spent his first weeks poring over our grant contracts, streamlining processes to get aid to communities faster. He'd sat in on strategy sessions, asking sharp questions about our data models, and even suggested tweaks to our scholarship program that boosted efficiency by 10%. Rachel, my COO, had pulled me aside after one meeting. "Your brother's good, Emily. He's not just coasting on his law degree, he's invested." Daniel, our head of grant programs, agreed, noting how Michael's legal expertise had strengthened our partnerships with local hospitals. Even Lisa, my assistant, who'd been skeptical at first, admitted he was pulling his weight. "He's not what I expected," she'd said, handing me a coffee one morning. "He's actually listening." But the real test came today. Michael's presentation wasn't just a report. It was a bold plan to partner with Chicago's public schools, using our predictive analytics to identify at-risk students and fund tailored support programs. If approved, it would be our biggest initiative yet, with a $10 million budget and potential to reach thousands of kids. I'd given him the lead on this, not just because of his skills, but because I wanted to see if he could embrace our mission fully. As he set up his laptop, I caught his eye. "Ready?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. He nodded, a flicker of nerves crossing his face. "As I'll ever be. This is big, Emily." I smiled faintly. "It is. Show them what you've got." The boardroom filled with our executive team, Rachel, Daniel, and a dozen other directors who'd helped build the foundation into what it was. The digital screens glowed with our latest impact metrics: 20,000 students funded, 15 clinics supported, and a 92% success rate in our programs. Michael took his place at the front, his suit crisp, but his demeanor less polished than it had been 6 months ago. He'd traded some of his lawyer swagger for a quieter confidence, one that came from understanding the stakes of our work. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steady. "Today, I'm presenting our proposed Chicago Education Equity Initiative. Our goal is to use data-driven insights to support at-risk students, ensuring they have the resources to succeed." He clicked through his slides, walking the board through the plan. The initiative would target schools in underserved neighborhoods, using our algorithms to predict which students needed tutoring, counseling, or financial aid. He'd worked with Daniel to crunch the numbers, projecting a 25% increase in graduation rates within 3 years. He fielded questions with ease, citing legal frameworks to secure partnerships and addressing budget concerns with precision. I watched, impressed but cautious. This was the Michael I'd always known was there, smart, capable, driven, but it was the first time I'd seen him channel it into something bigger than himself. As he wrapped up, Rachel leaned forward. "This is ambitious, Michael. How do you propose we scale it without stretching our resources?" He didn't miss a beat. "We leverage existing partnerships with community organizations and use our data to prioritize high-impact schools first. I've already drafted agreements with 3 districts pending your approval." The room buzzed with murmurs of approval. Daniel nodded, scribbling notes. "Solid plan. I'd like to see the pilot timeline by next week." Michael smiled, a rare, genuine one. "You'll have it Monday." As the board clapped, I caught his eye again, giving a small nod. He'd nailed it. After the meeting, the room cleared out, leaving just me and Michael as he packed up his materials. "That was impressive," I said, closing my laptop. "You didn't just pitch a project, you sold a vision." He paused, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I learned from the best," he said quietly. "You've been doing this for years, Emily. I'm just catching up." I raised an eyebrow, echoing the question I'd asked him 6 months ago. Learning from whom? He didn't hesitate this time. From my sister, who built a $50 million foundation while I was too busy judging her to notice. The words hit me harder than I expected. For years, I'd wanted him to see me, not as the family letdown, but as someone who'd built something real. Now here he was, saying it. I leaned against the table, studying him. What changed, Michael? 6 months ago, you thought I was wasting my life. Now you're presenting my vision to my board. He set his laptop down, his hands resting on the table. I was wrong about you, he said, his voice low but steady. I spent years measuring success by degrees, titles, corner offices. I thought you were floundering because you didn't follow that path. But then I saw this place, the programs, the impact, the lives you're changing. I realized I'd been so focused on my own definition of success that I missed what you'd built. He paused, looking out at the skyline. And I missed who you are. I crossed my arms, letting his words sink in. You didn't just miss who I am. You missed what I've been doing for our family. Ethan's school, Dad's treatments, Mom's remodel. You benefited from my work while calling me a failure. His face tightened, a mix of guilt and regret. I know. I found out about Ethan's tuition a month ago. Lisa let it slip when we were reviewing budgets. And then I started noticing other things, the hospital bills, the community center donation. You've been holding this family together, and I never saw it. I nodded, keeping my voice even. You never asked. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from our childhood when he was frustrated. I was arrogant, Emily. I thought I had all the answers. But working here, seeing what you've done, it's humbling. I smiled faintly, not letting him off the hook entirely. Humbling's a start, but this job isn't just about you learning a lesson. It's about doing the work. You're good, Michael, but you've got to keep proving it. He met my eyes, his expression serious. I will. I want to be part of this, not just for the job, but because I believe in what you're doing. That evening, our parents showed up at the foundation's headquarters, looking out of place in the sleek lobby. They'd come for a small event we were hosting to announce the education initiative's pilot phase. Mom clutched her purse, her eyes wide as she took in the digital displays showing our impact numbers. Dad stood beside her, his face softer than usual, the lines of his recent illness barely visible. We saw the news about your new program, Mom said, hugging me tightly. It's incredible, Emily. Dad nodded, his voice gruff. This is yours? All of it? I smiled, gesturing around the lobby. It's mine, Dad, and Michael's helping make it bigger. Michael, standing nearby, shifted uncomfortably, but Mom turned to him, her eyes misty. You're working together now? Michael nodded, his voice quiet. Yeah, Mom. Emily's been teaching me a thing or two. Dad looked between us, his expression unreadable. We didn't know, Emily. All these years He trailed off, and Mom finished for him. We thought you were struggling. We pushed Michael to be the successful one, and we didn't see what you were doing. I took a deep breath, keeping my tone gentle but firm. Success isn't just one thing, Mom. It took us all a while to figure that out. Michael stepped forward, his voice steady. I was the worst about it. I judged her without looking, but I'm looking now. The event kicked off with Michael and me presenting the initiative to a small group of donors and community leaders. He took the lead, explaining how our data-driven approach would change lives, and I watched him, proud but still cautious. He wasn't just reciting lines, he believed in this. As the crowd applauded, a reporter from the Chicago Tribune approached, asking for a quote. This initiative, Michael said, glancing at me, is about rethinking what's possible. It's about giving kids a chance, no matter where they start. And it's built on the vision of someone who never gave up, even when people like me doubted her. The reporter turned to me, but I just smiled and let Michael's words stand. For the first time, I felt like he saw me. Later, as we cleaned up after the event, Michael and I stood in the conference room, the city lights twinkling outside. "You didn't have to give me that credit," I said, stacking chairs. He shrugged, loosening his tie. "You deserve it. This is your foundation, Emily. I'm just lucky to be part of it." I studied him, looking for the old arrogance, but it wasn't there. Instead, I saw something new, respect, maybe even admiration. "You're not just part of it," I said. "You're making it better." "That presentation today, it's going to change lives." He smiled, a real one, not the lawyer smirk I'd known for years. "We're going to change lives. Together." As we walked to the elevator, Mom and Dad joined us, still marveling at the foundation's work. "You two make a good team," Dad said, his voice warmer than I'd heard in years. Mom nodded, her eyes on me. "We're proud of you, Emily, and you, Michael, for seeing what we all missed." Michael glanced at me, his expression open. "Better late than never, right?" I laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet lobby. Better late than never. The Chicago skyline glowed outside my office window as Michael and I sat late, finalizing plans for the Education's initiative's next phase. 6 months ago, I'd been the sister he called a dreamer, a failure who'd never amount to anything. Now, he was my partner in building something that would outlast us both. The Carter Family Foundation had just launched its pilot program, with Michael's legal expertise ensuring every contract was airtight. The first schools were already reporting higher student engagement, and donors were lining up to fund the expansion. But as I watched him scribble notes across from me, I wondered if our newfound partnership could truly heal the years of distance between us. He looked up, catching my gaze. "What?" he asked, a half smile tugging at his lips. I leaned back, setting my pen down. "Just thinking about how we got here. You, me, working together. Not exactly what I pictured 6 months ago." He chuckled, loosening his tie. "Yeah, I didn't picture begging my little sister for a job either." I raised an eyebrow. "You didn't beg, you pitched, and you're good at it." He shook his head, his expression turning serious. "I'm good because of you, Emily. This place, this mission, it's changed how I see everything, including you." I studied him, searching for the old Michael, the one who'd smirked at family dinners, who'd assumed I was wasting my life. But that Michael was gone, replaced by someone who'd spent months proving he could learn, adapt, and respect the sister he'd underestimated. "What changed for you?" I asked, echoing the question I'd posed after his first presentation. He leaned forward, his hands clasped. "I stopped measuring success by what I thought it should look like. I spent years chasing titles, thinking that was the goal. But you built something that matters. Kids in school, families with healthcare, that's real. I was too arrogant to see it before." His words settled over me, heavy with meaning. For years, I'd carried the weight of being the family letdown, the one who'd walked away from law school to chase a dream they didn't understand. I'd funded Ethan's tuition, Dad's treatments, Mom's remodel, all while they thought I was scraping by. "You know," I said, my voice quiet, "I didn't do those things for credit. I did them because we're family." Michael nodded, his eyes steady. "I know, and I should have asked questions instead of assuming. I'm sorry, Emily, not just for what I said, but for not seeing you." The apology felt different this time, not just an admission of being wrong, but a promise to do better. I nodded, letting it sink in. "You're seeing me now. That's enough." He smiled, a real one, the kind we used to share when we were kids, before ambition and assumptions pulled us apart. "It's not enough," he said. "I want to keep building this with you, not just as your advisor, but as your brother." I felt a lump in my throat, unexpected and raw. "Careful," I said, forcing a grin. "You're getting sentimental." He laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "Blame the late nights. Your coffee addiction's rubbing off." We stood, gathering our things as the office lights dimmed automatically. As we walked to the elevator, I thought about how far we'd come. 6 months ago, Michael had walked into my boardroom, oblivious to who I was. Today, he was my right hand, presenting our vision to the world. Our parents had seen it too. At the launch event, their pride had been palpable, not just for Michael, but for me. Mom's apology still echoed in my mind. We didn't see what you were doing. Dad's gruff acknowledgement. This is yours. For the first time, I wasn't the family embarrassment. I was the one who'd built something lasting. The elevator doors opened and we stepped inside. Dinner Sunday? Michael asked, his tone casual but hopeful. My treat? I want to hear more about how you started this place. I smirked, hitting the button for the lobby. Your treat? On an advisor salary? He grinned, undeterred. Fine, your treat, but I'm picking the wine. I laughed, the sound echoing in the small space. Deal, but it better be good wine. As the doors closed, I glanced at him. My brother, my partner, my family. We'd spent years misjudging each other, but now we were building something together, not just a foundation, but a bond. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new grants, new lives to change. But tonight, it was enough to know we'd finally seen each other clearly. What would we build next?